She is the most special crown princess. Her mission is to make her cold-blooded husband cry, simply because his tears possess the power to overturn nations. For freedom, she accepts the secret mission, only to discover that beneath his cold exterior, he hides childhood trauma. Her true feelings begin to spiral out of control. How can she choose between love and freedom? In the beginning of the world, humans and spirits coexisted in harmony. The spirits generously shared the power of magic, but human greed sparked a war of plunder. After the spirits vanished, the land fell into drought and despair, until a king's tears transformed into rivers of hope. The Lacrima Empire was born from this miracle. Time flows to the present. The empire's fate hangs by a thread. A young girl runs barefoot through the corridor. Her heart is filled with resistance, unwilling to accept her predetermined fate. The maids whisper about the predicament of the crown princess candidates. Those noble ladies cannot endure the crown prince's coldness. Now, only this girl with different colored eyes remains in the entire empire. The young crown prince gently closes the ancient tome. The pages record the empire's destiny. Losing tears will bring destruction. As a crown prince, unable to cry, he bears the weight of the entire nation. Beneath his icy exterior lies an unknown secret. The girl's figure running toward freedom is firm and resolute. This fate, beginning with tears, awaits a new miracle. The blessed tears, the inherited power of royal blood, now shimmer in the little boy's eyes. His tears fall on his mother's cold face, miraculously reviving her fading life. A blonde man's cold laugh shatters this touching moment. He mocks that even a miracle cannot wash away the crime of regicide. The boy's tears surge even more, firmly believing in his mother's innocence. He remembers the night before his father's death, his uncle's sinister smile outside the door, now appearing again to win him over. Rage erupts instantly. The boy grabs a sharp weapon and stabs viciously at him. Piercing screams echo through the blood-soaked air. His dying mother uses her last breath to urge him to treasure every tear. Tears should only fall for those most precious. These words make the boy stop his tears immediately, his gaze becoming firm and cold. 14 years pass. One-eyed Emperor Leiden rules the nation. Yet the blessed tears, qualification for emperor, can only be shed by the crown prince. It is said this cold-blooded crown prince's tears have long dried up. Lancel accidentally overhears servants discussing the new crown princess candidate. They all speculate this noble lady will be driven away like her predecessors. Lancel suddenly appears, stepping on the head of the chattering servant. He coldly orders to replace these noisy rats. The dragged-away servant curses how a heartless person can govern the nation. Meanwhile, in a room deep within the palace, an old man admires a divine bird in a cage that can freely change size. Afterward, they go to greet the arriving crown prince. A richly dressed young girl brushes past the herald. She quietly slips into the room, her gaze falling on the magnificent birdcage. Deep sympathy for the imprisoned divine bird surges within her. She pulls out a key, determined to escape the palace with the divine bird. Lancel walks to the door outside, keenly sensing something amiss. He pushes the door open forcefully, just in time to see the girl preparing to fly away on the bird. The instant the divine bird spreads its wings, he grabs her ankle, pulling her down from midair, pinning her firmly beneath him. He coldly questions this mysterious girl who dares to touch royal property. The girl struggles beneath him, guilty and uneasy. This unexpected encounter will soon change the fate of two worlds. Ribera lost her mother at a young age. Her father raised her through hardship, only to be killed by a noble's carriage. That cruel noble not only refused compensation, but even demanded payment for damages. Left without support, she could only leave home to work as a maid in a noble household, until one day, the Grand Duke suddenly proposed to adopt her as his daughter. She naively thought she could finally welcome a happy life. The truth was, she simply resembled the late Duke's daughter. Now she is sent to the palace as a pawn in a political marriage. Her heart is filled with resentment. No one has ever cared about her thoughts. The humiliation of being sent to the palace like luggage makes her determined. Since she is the empire's last noble lady, she must find a reason to refuse this marriage. When she sees the imprisoned, divine bird, a bold idea surges within her. Just as she prepares to escape with the divine bird, Lancel suddenly appears. The divine bird seizes the chance to break free, spreading its wings toward the free sky. The old man watches in anguish as the tribute disappears without a trace. She nervously swallows. The man before her is more terrifying than imagined. Lancel keenly perceives she is no ordinary thief. In desperation, she suddenly cries out loudly, begging to be arrested. She would rather confess her crime than marry this terrifying man. Lancel finally recognizes her identity, his tone laced with amusement. He approaches her, deeply intrigued by her motive for refusing the engagement. Unlike other women pursuing power, her resistance seems exceptionally special. He leans close to her ear, declaring in a low voice that he will give her special punishment. She retreats in terror, but is firmly held by knights. Lancel orders her imprisoned, claiming he will come find her later. In the cold dungeon, she angrily kicks at the walls. The empty cell makes her feel terrified. Suddenly, rattling chains make her turn around nervously. A strange man with blonde hair and red eyes quietly appears outside the cell. Servants report in panic that Ribera has disappeared from prison. Lancel appears calm on the surface, but a barely perceptible flicker passes through his eyes. At this moment, Ribera sits stiffly in a luxurious room. The blonde man gently introduces himself as Second Prince Tadeo. She anxiously asks if escaping prison is appropriate. Tadeo smiles and informs her she has received the Emperor's pardon. This sudden pardon leaves her utterly confused. She doesn't understand why she, guilty of a serious crime, could be forgiven. Tadeo meaningfully mentions this is the first time the Crown Prince has shown interest in a woman. He keenly perceives her strong resistance. Unlike other noble ladies eager to become Crown Princess, her reaction is particularly particularly special. Ribera gathers courage to ask the second prince his true purpose for seeking her. Tadeo lowers his voice, demanding she keep the following secret. He solemnly declares this is an imperial order that cannot be disobeyed. As long as she obtains one tear from the crown prince, she can regain her freedom. This unbelievable task shocks Ribera profoundly. Tadeo warns her she must never let the crown prince know of this plan. Just as she hesitates, urgent footsteps sound outside the door. Lancel storms into the room furiously, his gaze icy. He demands to know why Ribera is here. Tadeo calmly explains this is the emperor's pardon. Ribera keenly senses the tense atmosphere between them. Lancel scans the situation before him with disgust. He sneers a warning that Ribera will regret today's decision. With that, he slams the door and leaves without looking back. Ribera breaks down, saying she would rather die than marry the crown prince. Tadeo timely offers an invitation to cooperate. She accepts this proposal without hesitation. Tadeo is amused by her straightforward response, gently taking her hand. An elegant hand kiss makes Ribera blush instantly. However, he changes tone, indicating his help is not unconditional. This sudden turn makes Ribera wary. Tadeo's proposed condition is surprisingly simple. She only needs to occasionally report the crown prince's daily trivial matters to him. Doubt rises in Ribera's heart. This condition is too easy. She tentatively asks if the two princes have a bad relationship. Tadeo skillfully avoids the topic, his smile meaningful. He hints that if she wants to know more, she should visit often. Ribera leafs through thick historical records in the library, trying to find the crown prince's weakness between the lines. Records show the emperor tried every method to force him to cry. From tragic dramas to extremely spicy food, all ended in failure. She realizes in despair this is nearly an impossible task, but she notices recent records have been torn out. Just as she falls into thought, servants' gossip reaches her ears. Those malicious speculations about her different colored eyes pierce her ears. She turns to face those hypocritical smiles, coldly retorting, using the monster power they fear most as a threat. This is the survival method she learned in the noble world. As she leaves angrily, she accidentally bumps into a familiar embrace. Books fall to the ground, meeting Lancel's mocking gaze. He mocks her for sneakily investigating her future husband. Ribera pretends to be calm, claiming this is just necessary understanding. Lancel keenly points out her predicament of being alone. The contempt in his words ignites anger in her heart. As he turns to leave, she suddenly grabs his sleeve, gathering courage to invite him to watch opera together. Lancel incredulously asks why he should agree. She insists this is a necessary attempt to improve their relationship. He helplessly rubs his forehead, finding her persistence both amusing and troubling. Ribera still grips his sleeve, her eyes shining with anticipation. Finally, he sighs softly, not directly refusing this abrupt invitation. She watches his departing figure, a glimmer of hope rising in her heart. She resolves to find the torn-out record pages, firmly believing the key to making the crown prince cry is hidden there. Morning light spills through the curtains onto Lancel's face. He lazily turns over. Outside the door comes servants' attempts to stop her and Ribera's determined footsteps. Ignoring obstruction, she pushes open the door, her nightgown floating gently in the morning light. Lancel opens his eyes to see her standing by the bed with a cunning smile. Servants hastily explain they tried their best to stop her, but to no avail. Ribera sits down directly by the bed, declaring he has nowhere to escape today. Lancel helplessly observes her improper attire. She confidently states they wouldn't have other thoughts about each other anyway. Seeing him rub his forehead and sigh, she proudly announces even the show tickets are ready. Before leaving, she playfully hints the performance might touch his heart. In the carriage, Lancel finally asks about the performance's star. Ribera excitedly describes Casita's charm and talent. His indifferent reaction makes her recommend even more enthusiastically. Lancel sees through that she actually wants to watch it herself. She flustered denies it, turning to ask about his hobbies. Seeing his silence, she patiently explains the importance of sharing interests. When getting off, her radiant smile as she turns makes him slightly stunned. Outside the theater, a little girl holding a bouquet timidly approaches. Ribera crouches down to gently listen to her request. The girl speaks of her admiration for Casita and dream of becoming a singer. Under the theater director's surprised gaze, Ribera gladly accepts the bouquet. Lancel comments lightly from the side that she is just meddlesome. Entering, he keenly notices the girl's foreign heritage. Ribera takes the opportunity to tell the story of Casita breaking prejudice against foreigners. She playfully states the honor of delivering flowers belongs only to her. Lancel pretends fatigue and urges them to sit quickly. At this moment, a mysterious figure is speaking in low voices not far away. He pulls down his hat brim, secretly confirming the action plan. The man's sinister gaze constantly follows their figures. Ribera is awed by the magnificent theater, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She looks around like a child, completely disregarding the decorum of a noble lady. Lancel watches her innocent appearance, a trace of helplessness rising in his heart. She suddenly remembers the main task, deciding to go backstage first to find Casita, but she worries the crown prince will take the chance to leave, hesitantly stopping. She has a sudden idea, removing the ribbon from her collar and gently tying it on his wrist. She carefully ties a bow, admiring her handiwork with satisfaction. Instructing him to wait for her return, only then does she turn and leave reassured. Lancel looks at the soft ribbon on his wrist, shaking his head with both amusement and exasperation. Ribera anxiously knocks on the dressing room door, her heart full of anticipation. However, no one answers for a long time, making her feel somewhat uneasy. She sits at the door waiting, but the more she thinks, the more suspicious it seems. The servant clearly said she entered the dressing room. She finally cannot hold back, deciding to search everywhere for Casita. In the dim corridor, she catches sight of the staff member who gave directions earlier. That person's sneaky appearance makes her vigilant. She quietly follows, only to witness a shocking scene. Casita is held hostage by a burly thug, struggling desperately. Ribera turns to call for help, but is blocked by a mysterious person. Pungent liquid instantly overwhelms her consciousness. Her vision gradually blurs. The last thing she sees is the other's cold smile. Lancel impatiently taps the armrest in his seat, the performance already delayed. An ominous premonition makes him finally untie the ribbon on his wrist. Backstage is in chaos, the director raging over Casita's disappearance. Lancel's appearance throws everyone into panic. He calmly asks about Ribera's whereabouts. The atmosphere suddenly tense. A servant hurriedly reports finding a scattered bouquet at the back door. Lancel's gaze instantly turns stern, indescribable anxiety surging in his heart. He decisively takes control of the scene, ordering the entire theater sealed. Angry audience members are held inside the theater, emotions growing more agitated. The director trembles as he seeks final assurance from Lancel. Lancel calmly checks the list, finding all personnel present. An arrogant man suddenly appears, mocking the theater's poor hospitality. He deliberately incites the crowd, demanding Casita appear personally to apologize. A servant whispers this is Count Lopez, who claims to be Casita's patron. Lancel keenly notices the Count's connection to the theater expansion. When he hears there's a passage between the two buildings, his eyes sharpen. At the director's plea, he agrees to announce Casita's disappearance, but insists on concealing the truth about Ribera's disappearance. He then leads guards silently to the adjacent building. At this moment, Ribera is thrown harshly onto the cold ground. The man in the hat furiously berates his subordinate for bungling the job. He orders others to take Casita away as originally planned, staying behind alone to handle this unexpected trouble. Ribera tries to crawl toward the door while he's not paying attention, but the man corners her with a knife. The sharp blade presses against her neck, gleaming coldly. The man mockingly reveals this is the Count's revenge born from love turned to hate. Casita will be framed for embezzling and fleeing, forever leaving the stage. Ribera angrily condemns their despicable actions. At this critical moment, she notices the huge vase overhead. She forcefully crashes into the cabinet. The vase falls with a crash. The man clutches his injured head, filled with rage. Ribera desperately rushes toward the door, but is caught again. Just then, Lancel's familiar voice comes from outside. She barely cries for help before her mouth is firmly covered. Lancel keenly catches the faint sound. He pushes open the door, vigilantly scanning the empty room. At this moment, Ribera is held hostage inside the wardrobe. The blade presses tightly against her throat, ready to strike at any moment. Lancel's steps stop before the wardrobe, reaching out to open it. On the other side, Casita angrily identifies those thugs who kidnapped her. The servants instead turn the tables, falsely accusing her of attempting to flee with money. As both sides argue fiercely, Lancel's gaze is drawn to a ribbon on the ground. It's Ribera's hair ornament, now lying alone on the ground. Casita urgently mentions the noble lady holding the bouquet. The servants hastily deny, claiming to know nothing about it. Lancel picks up the ribbon, his gaze suddenly turning ice cold. The criminal inside the wardrobe intensifies his threat, blade pressing tightly against Ribera's throat. Her whole body stiffens, only able to desperately call Lancel's name in her mind. Guards report the search yielded nothing, suggesting they return to the main theater. Seeing Lancel seemingly ready to give up the search, Ribera falls into despair. At this critical moment, he suddenly turns and pulls open the wardrobe. With lightning speed, he strikes down the criminal. The terrified Ribera loses control and crashes into Lancel's embrace. They both fall to the ground together. She finally cannot help sobbing. Tears soak his clothes, telling of her recent fear and grievance. A flutter Lancel has never felt before stirs in his heart, but remembering his mother's dying warning, he forcefully suppresses the surging emotions. He coldly orders her not to cry anymore, yet his arms unconsciously tighten. Accompanying guards quickly subdue all suspects. Count Lopez is severely punished for threatening the Grand Duke's daughter. Ribera solemnly presents the little girl's bouquet to Casita. This strong actress is finally moved to tears. After the incident settles, Ribera still feels shaken while resting. Lancel's servant Karu comes to inquire about her injuries. Learning her neck was injured by a blade, he becomes extremely worried. At this moment, an imposing figure suddenly appears. Her adoptive father, Grand Duke Geralt Dualti, approaches with a furious expression. Lancel is handling official business when unusual commotion comes from outside. The Grand Duke pushes open the door furiously while carrying Ribera, completely ignoring servants' attempts to stop him. This powerful father's eyes see only his injured daughter. Ribera struggles in his arms, trying to explain this was just an accident. As one of the Empire's most powerful nobles, Grand Duke Geralt shows an almost obsessive protectiveness toward his adopted daughter. He sternly questions why his daughter always involves herself in danger alone. When his gaze turns to Lancel, it carries obvious dissatisfaction and blame. Ribera nervously looks at Lancel, hoping he will say something. However, the Crown Prince only responds with silence, as if acknowledging this accusation. The Grand Duke disappointedly takes his daughter's hand, preparing to leave the palace. Ribera stubbornly breaks free, stating she wants to stay. She refuses to be placed around like an object anymore. These words deeply move the Grand Duke, his gaze complex as he looks at his daughter. He finally compromises, yet still emphasizes the rights she deserves. As the Grand Duke's daughter, she could enjoy the most secure life. After the Grand Duke leaves, Lancel lightly taps her forehead. His tone carries rare gentleness, saying she is a willful, wild girl. Ribera indignantly retorts, expressing her determination to pursue freedom. As she turns to leave, Lancel watches her back thoughtfully. Ribera strolls through the garden, her heart full of confusion. She wants to stick to her choice, yet doesn't know how to achieve her goal. The task of obtaining the Crown Prince's tears seems increasingly difficult. Just as she falls into thought, a familiar red bird suddenly appears. She turns in surprise to find Tadeo standing behind her with a smile. The second prince inquires with concern about her recent experiences. Beneath the seemingly casual greeting hides a deeper intent. The red bird on her shoulder affectionately nuzzles her finger. The second prince gently explains this is an injured bird he found outside the palace. These past days it kept trying to go out, only today learning it was searching for her. Ribera is moved by the bird's gratitude, her eyes growing moist. Tadeo suddenly leans close, his breath brushing her ear. She instantly blushes, her heart racing, stepping back half a step flustered. He chuckles, saying he has a gift, asking her to turn around, then personally places a necklace on her. He gazes at her affectionately, praising how well the necklace suits her. Ribera shyly lowers her head, fingertips lightly touching the gift at her neck. Tadeo explains this is a mystical stone that brings good fortune. His tone carries subtle ambiguity and concern, hoping this necklace can guard her in his place. Meanwhile, Grand Duke Geralt comes before the Emperor. Emperor Leiden stands by the window, his tone laced with mockery. He finds it puzzling that Geralt is so fond of his adopted daughter. He deliberately mentions Ribera's various exploits since entering the palace. From stealing tribute to being kidnapped, each incident is scandalous. Geralt kneels to apologize, requesting to take his daughter home. The Emperor suddenly laughs heartily, expressing great admiration for this girl. It is her appearance that has begun to change the cold Crown Prince. He slowly makes a surprising suggestion, hoping to formally bring Ribera into the royal family through marriage. Geralt looks up in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. Grand Duke Geralt brings his daughter a young guard named Apis. Ribera is surprised that despite her youth, she has already joined the elite knights. Her father sternly instructs her that the guard must accompany her at all times. She obediently agrees, yet feels helpless about this overprotection. Suddenly, familiar wing beats sound from outside the window. Ribera turns joyfully to find the red bird gently tapping at the window frame. Apis instantly draws her sword, the blade pointing at the uninvited guest. Ribera hastily shields the bird, pleading with the guard to show mercy. She finally believes this silent girl truly possesses exceptional skills. The bird chirps urgently, as if conveying an important message. Ribera has a sudden idea, deciding to follow the bird to find the Crown Prince. They quietly trail Lancel's servant through the courtyard. Servant Karu stands troubled under a large tree, looking up and trying to persuade. Among the tree shadows, Lancel's lazily leaning figure can be faintly seen. The servant suggests he should visit his fiancée, but is coldly rebuked. Ribera secretly rejoices at finally finding his hiding place. Lancel has already detected her presence, his tone carrying helplessness. Unconvinced, she rides the enlarged bird up to the treetop. In the narrow branches, the two must sit close together. Lancel suddenly presses closer, demanding her true purpose. She retreats in panic, hitting the tree trunk, tears welling in pain. He watches her predicament with amusement, his mood inexplicably pleased. Ribera suppresses her anger, taking the opportunity to mention those mysterious records. She carefully asks about the truth of the blessed tears, why he would rather endure various tests than use this power, whether there are unknown hardships hidden. Lancel's gaze suddenly turns cold, the atmosphere instantly freezing. This question touches the deepest taboo in his heart. Lancel gazes at the innocent girl before him, thoughts churning in his mind. Those who previously asked about his tears all harbored intentions to exploit or flatter. Only this simple girl perhaps truly acts only out of concern. That night suddenly flashes through his mind. His uncle's twisted smile and his father's collapsing figure interweave and appear. The bloody scene makes his breath catch. He suddenly understands this was all a conspiracy to seize the blessed tears. He unsteadily grabs the tree trunk, his face instantly turning pale. Ribera approaches in alarm, her eyes filled with worry. She has never seen the Crown Prince so vulnerable. Remembering that comforting embrace at the theater, she opens her arms without hesitation. Lancel is startled, frozen by her sudden action. She tightly wraps around his trembling shoulders, softly explaining her reason. His initially resisting hand slowly drops, allowing her to hold him. Yet his fingertip mischievously pokes her forehead. Ribera cries out as she leans backward, nearly falling from the branch. He quickly catches her waist, steadily bringing her back into his embrace. The two sit facing each other among the branches, the atmosphere subtle. She joyfully discovers his emotions have calmed. Lancel suddenly mentions the Emperor's obsession with tears, yet cannot explain the truth hidden behind this. With that, he leaps down from the branch, leaving without looking back. Ribera sits alone in the tree, her heart turbulent. So the Crown Prince can also show such a vulnerable side. The truth about the Emperor demanding tears makes her vaguely uneasy. This seemingly simple mission appears to involve a deeper conspiracy. A few days later, Lancel suddenly announces his upcoming visit to the maritime kingdom of Chryseis. Ribera is overjoyed. This is her first time stepping outside Imperial territory. Lancel watches her innocent smile, yet feels vaguely uneasy. The Emperor's sudden arrangement of this diplomatic visit must have deeper meaning. When the ship reaches the maritime kingdom, Ribera is deeply captivated by the foreign scenery, blue-haired residents, and unique architecture architecture overwhelm her eyes. Lancel calmly reminds her of the diplomatic mission of this trip. Prime Minister Herman receives them with elegant ceremony. He naturally addresses them as Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Lancel permits this address for convenience. Herman enthusiastically recounts their hero rescuing beauty story spreading across nations. Ribera shyly tries to explain, but is stopped by Lancel's gaze. Herman leads them into the palace. Young Queen Claudia personally receives the delegation. Ribera is deeply drawn to the queen's unique temperament. The two women quickly engage in warm conversation. Claudia proudly introduces the maritime kingdom's prosperous glory. Lancel suddenly interrupts the conversation, pointing out the abnormality of this meeting. The usually neutral maritime kingdom suddenly showing favor must be suspicious. Tense atmosphere pervades the reception hall. Herman timely offers specialty pastries to ease the situation. Ribera is attracted by the novel delicacies, temporarily forgetting the tension. Claudia finally brings out official documents, getting to the point. She speaks frankly, requesting the power of the blessed tears. Ribera stops in shock, unable to believe it. The queen is willing to offer control of part of the sea territory in exchange. Lancel responds with silence, his gaze deep and inscrutable. A bold idea suddenly flashes through Ribera's mind. Perhaps this is an excellent opportunity to obtain his tears. When Herman arranges for them to share a guest room, Ribera is too shocked to speak. Images of being in the same room with the crown prince float through her mind. She frantically wants to refuse this embarrassing arrangement, but Lancel suddenly pulls her into his embrace, naturally accepting the arrangement. He whispers in her ear, hinting they need to talk properly tonight. However, when the door closes, the two only sit facing each other in silence. Ribera recalls Claudia's sorrowful eyes. The young queen spoke of the pain of her brother's illness, how she neglected her only family member due to busy state affairs, until her brother suddenly collapsed during an argument. She was filled with regret. All the nation's renowned physicians were helpless. She could only watch her brother's life slipping away daily. Hope reignited when she received the emperor's letter. What shocked Ribera even more was that Claudia knew of those past events. Her deeds of freeing the tribute bird and protecting the foreign performer spread far to other nations. These small matters she thought insignificant became hope in others' eyes. Claudia's final plea stirs strong resonance in her heart. She gathers courage to ask if Lancel is willing to offer help. However, she receives a firm refusal. He calmly analyzes this is merely a trap set by the emperor. Even accepting the deal would bring no benefit to the empire. Ribera cannot believe he could be so coldly calculating. In her fury, she remembers her father's helplessness when he passed. If she possessed such power, she would never stand by and watch someone die. After accusing him of being heartless, she storms out. Lancel sits alone in the room, rubbing his forehead with a long sigh. He knew it would come to this, yet still feels a sense of loss. Ribera walks swiftly through the corridor, tears finally sliding down. She suddenly stops, slapping her cheeks hard to pull herself together. Since she knew it would be difficult, she shouldn't give up easily. That day in the tree, glimpsing his vulnerable side proved he is not heartless. Perhaps there's still a chance. Perhaps she can still move him. Herman appears timely, inquiring about the situation with concern. She pretends to be composed, lying that she's admiring the palace's beauty. Herman smiles and mentions the morning fruit, inviting her to visit the palace orchard, saying he'd like to have a good chat. Ribera strolls through the palace orchard, deeply captivated by the rows of apple trees. Two maids whisper among the bushes, quickly falling silent when they see her. Herman appears at the right moment, handing her a brightly colored fruit. She takes a light bite, sweet juice spreading across her lips. The prime minister casually mentions the difficult choice facing the crown prince. Ribera forces herself to stay calm, though her heart races at being seen through. She firmly states that if it were up to her, she would help without hesitation. Herman sharply asks what benefits such an action would bring. If they return home now, it might be more beneficial for both sides. These words hit her like cold water, making her realize her own naivety. But she still insists that life is far more important than benefits. She will do everything she can to persuade the crown prince to help. Herman meaningfully reminds her that the world is dangerous. Pure kindness is most easily exploited. Back in her room, she repeatedly contemplates the deeper meaning of these words. Remembering Lancel's previous warnings, she can't help doubting her own actions. Perhaps, as he said, kindness might actually make things worse. Under the dim lamplight, she finds Lancel deep in sleep. His forehead is covered in cold sweat, as if tormented by nightmares. She gently covers him with a thin blanket, but he unconsciously grasps her sleeve. In his sleep, he looks as vulnerable as a child, softly calling for his mother. Ribera thinks of the executed empress, feeling a bitter ache in her heart. So he has been carrying such a heavy past all along. Her fingertips gently touch his furrowed brow, hoping to ease his pain. She whispers a promise in his ear to stay by his side forever. Exhaustion makes her lean against the sofa and fall into deep sleep. Lancel quietly rises and gently carries her to the bed. His fingertips lift a strand of her hair, stirring unfamiliar ripples in his heart. He then shyly turns his face away, puzzled by this sudden flutter. The next morning, Ribera puts on her necklace. She gently touches the necklace, as if drawing courage from it. She earnestly asks Herman to take her to visit the bedridden Prince Joel. The prince on his sickbed remains unconscious, with the air filled with a decaying smell. Herman explains in a low voice that this strange illness is eroding the prince's body at an alarming rate. His skin gradually festers, his life draining away like sand through an hourglass. This terrible sight makes Ribera even more convinced that only the blessed tears can save his life. She asks Herman to tell her more about this gentle prince's past. They were once the closest siblings. Later, they grew apart due to political disagreements. Just when their disputes were most intense, the prince suddenly fell ill with this strange disease. While Claudia pushes forward with harsh policies, her face always carries an unshakable sorrow. Back in the room, Ribera tells Lancel everything she saw and heard. He responds coldly, turning a deaf ear to her words. She brings local specialty fruits, carefully trying to please him, but he swats them away, the fruit scattering across the floor. He accuses her of being naive and childish, never able to understand the cruelty of politics. Ribera breaks down and demands to know why such precious power was given to him. If she had this ability, she would use it to save more lives. Dejected, she turns to leave, and the necklace around her neck suddenly slips off. As she bends down to pick it up, she notices strange fruits on the table. They are completely different from the usual varieties, giving off an inexplicable eeriness. Just as she reaches to touch them, a young chef hurriedly stops her, claiming these are the prince's special medicine. The chef forcefully pushes her out of the kitchen, acting suspiciously. Ribera keenly senses the secrets hidden in this palace. Those apples always seem to appear at crucial moments, raising suspicions. She immediately orders APIs to secretly prepare a blue wig, determined to uncover the truth behind all these mysteries. Lancel ponders alone, the current situation making him vaguely uneasy. Claudia is implementing policies to weaken the nobility, and Prince Joel falls ill at precisely this time. The timing of everything is too coincidental, as if an invisible hand is manipulating events. He begins to suspect the prince's illness is not as simple as it appears. In the royal office, Claudia anxiously asks about the possibility of obtaining the blessed tears. Herman softly reassures her, his gaze hiding barely perceptible tenderness. He suddenly leans down and lightly kisses her forehead, breaking the boundary between sovereign and subject. Though Claudia looks displeased, her tense nerves relax slightly. He firmly promises to always stay by her side and protect her. Outside the kitchen, the young chef complains to a maid about that meddlesome guest. Ribera's enthusiasm has become their biggest trouble. At this moment, a blue-haired woman clumsily knocks over the fruit basket, sending those strange apples rolling across the floor. The young chef scolds angrily, but dares not raise his voice. Disguised, Ribera apologizes repeatedly, though her eyes gleam with sharpness. She takes advantage of the chaos to pick up one strange fruit and quickly hides it in her sleeve. This risky move makes her heart pound like a drum. Just recently, she had APIs secretly investigate the orchard. They found these strange fruits are not among the normally cultivated varieties. This strengthens her determination to find out the truth. Even if the path ahead is dangerous, it's better than watching innocent lives fade away. She carefully examines the fruit in her hand, finally gathering the courage to take a bite. Lancel is still pondering in the room when he suddenly hears the door pushed open. A blue-haired woman staggers in, her figure swaying unsteadily. He initially thinks it's another maid bringing fruit, feeling displeased. Only when he sees those distinctive heterochromatic eyes does he recognize Ribera. She curls up on the floor in pain, the fruit in her hand rolling to the side. She uses her last strength to reveal that Prince Joel's illness is not ordinary. Then she falls unconscious, unaware of anything. Ribera arrives in a strange space. She desperately thinks her young life is about to end here. A voice suddenly sounds behind her. The woman appearing in the darkness resembles Ribera strikingly. She avoids answering about her identity, only smiling meaningfully. Ribera demands to know where she is, but only gets vague responses. The woman softly reveals that what made her faint was not poison but malice. These words echo in the void, carrying a chilling coldness. She begs Ribera to stop here and not delve deeper into this conspiracy. Ignorance is bliss. Staying away from danger is the only way to preserve life. Ribera stubbornly shakes her head, her eyes burning with an unyielding flame. Even if the path ahead is fraught with danger, she must uncover the truth. The mysterious woman suddenly smiles, her farewell words carrying deep meaning. When she opens her eyes, she reveals heterochromatic eyes identical to Ribera's. Ribera jolts awake to find herself held tightly in Lancel's arms. The lingering worry in his eyes makes her heart skip a beat. Embarrassed, she accidentally bumps his chin, apologizing incoherently. Lancel covers his chin, his eyes showing suppressed anger. Ribera stammers her explanation, not daring to meet his eyes. She conceals her encounter in the dream, only mentioning the abnormality of the fruit. Lancel harshly scolds her recklessness, his tone barely hiding his fear. If that fruit could truly cause serious illness, her life would be in danger by now. Ribera blurts out asking if he's concerned about her. The moment the words leave her mouth, both freeze, an awkward silence filling the air. She hastily swears to be more careful in the future and not recklessly take risks, but she still insists on immediately meeting the queen to report her findings. Lancel tries to stop her, but she insists on completing the mission she started. On the other side, the prince is preparing to take his medicine, but he's interrupted by an alarmed shout. Ribera and Lancel burst through the door, urgently stopping him from drinking the medicinal soup. Joel stares at the uninvited guests in shock, the medicine bowl suspended in midair. With Ribera's rapid breathing, the truth is about to be revealed. A servant bursts into Claudia's office in panic, reporting that the foreign visitors have forcefully entered the prince's chamber. Ribera snatches the medicine bowl from Joel's hands, her voice trembling with agitation. She insists the prince's his symptoms are not caused by disease but something else. She raises her blackened palm as evidence, everyone turning pale with shock. Joel demands in disbelief how she knew all this. She's about to explain the strange apple she found in the kitchen, but Joel suddenly grabs her wrist, vehemently denying this truth. At this chaotic moment, Claudia and Herman arrive upon hearing the news. Joel immediately switches to a pained expression, begging them to expel the intruders. He sharply points out Ribera's suspicious disguised appearance. Ribera helplessly looks to Lancel, only receiving a cold response. Just when she cannot defend herself, Herman elegantly steps forward. He calmly admits that he granted Ribera the privilege to act. This unexpected turn makes Joel's face turn deathly pale instantly. Claudia keenly notices her brother's abnormal insistence. She harshly questions whether this is a carefully planned conspiracy by the nobles. Joel refutes excitedly, his voice carrying barely concealed panic. Lancel timely proposes using the blessed tears as verification. This proposal completely shatters Joel's last psychological defense. He violently throws off the covers and rushes desperately toward the door. Lancel swiftly blocks his path, holding him firmly. Claudia painfully demands why her brother insists on protecting the nobles. Joel breaks free and finally speaks the heartbreaking truth. He shouts hoarsely that all of this was to protect his sister. These words echo like thunder through the chamber, leaving everyone frozen in place. In childhood, Joel always hid behind trees crying secretly. Claudia was always his strongest protector. Everyone believed the brave sister was the ideal heir, yet their father unexpectedly passed the throne to the gentle Joel. This decision plunged both siblings into shock and pain. Claudia couldn't accept their father's absurd choice. She firmly believed only she could lead the nation to prosperity. Yet until their father's death, this decision never changed. Joel timidly expressed he could never surpass his sister's talents. He ultimately ceded the throne to his sister, believing she would lead the nation to prosperity. He thought this would be the perfect solution to all problems. After Claudia ascended the throne, she proposed taxing the nobles. She ambitiously planned to expand territory through war. Joel questioned in disbelief. This completely violated their father's wishes. Claudia coldly declared she was the true monarch of this nation. The words, "You're just a crybaby," completely shattered his last bit of trust. Joel cried desperately in a corner, fearing war and even more the stranger his sister had become. The once gentle nanny had now become a stranger. She laughed lightly and sowed discord, saying Claudia had been corrupted by power. She took out that strange apple, emanating an ominous aura, tempting him to use it to test his sister's sincerity while seizing power. Joel knocked away the apple, his heart full of conflict and struggle. He wanted to prove his sister still cared, yet feared seeing the truth. When he feigned illness and saw Claudia's worried expression, his heart wrenched. Was this care genuine, or just a disguise of power? When the truth came out, Claudia slapped him hard. This slap shattered not just trust, but also their once precious bond. Claudia tightly grips Joel's collar. She can't believe her brother would test her sincerity in such a cruel way. Joel stubbornly uses the most hurtful words to wound his sister's heart. Loud slaps fall repeatedly, especially jarring in the silent room. Herman hurries forward to intervene, worried Joel's weak body cannot endure this. Lancel gently shakes his head, signaling to let the siblings continue releasing their pent-up emotions. Claudia's voice suddenly chokes, tears welling in her eyes. She remembers the brother who always hid behind her yet always supported her. In her memory, Joel firmly said she was the most suitable person to rule the nation. Those pure smiles were filled with unreserved trust and admiration. She thought this bond would never be destroyed by anything. Little did she know her forcefulness had planted seeds of unease in her brother's heart. Claudia slowly crouches down to meet Joel's eyes. Trembling, she asks if they can restore their former trust. Joel smiles through tears, softly saying she will always be his only queen. This warm scene makes Ribera's eyes well up. She quietly longs for such unreserved trust and bond. Herman timely suggests giving the siblings space alone. On the way out, Ribera vaguely senses something unusual in the air. Herman suddenly turns around, thanking them meaningfully. Lancel quickly shields Ribera behind him, his gaze sharp as a hawk. He has long sensed this prime minister's words and actions are suspicious everywhere. Herman calmly invites them to the reception room for a detailed discussion. After sitting down, Ribera finally asks the question on her mind, whether he already knew the truth about Joel feigning illness. Herman frankly admits it, his tone so calm it's alarming. He calmly analyzes the turmoil that might be caused by a change in succession. As a loyal subject, he must clear all obstacles for the queen. Lancel sharply points out he's merely exploiting this crisis for gain. Herman neither confirms nor denies, instead reminding Ribera of her overly kind nature. In this world full of schemes, pure hearts are most easily manipulated. He takes out a red paper marked with a serpent totem. The moment Lancel sees the pattern, he rises abruptly, his expression changing drastically. Ribera has never seen him lose composure like this. Herman's fingertips lightly touch the paper, his expression grave. He recounts finding this cult symbol among the nanny's belongings. The organization called Replicas and its beliefs have long been buried by time. Their doctrine runs counter to current religion, filled with dangerous ideas, believing that the spirits' power should not be shared but controlled by humans. This is identical to the thinking of those greedy individuals during the Great War. Herman meaningfully proposes sharing intelligence about this cult. This would strengthen relations between the two nations, more than fighting over maritime control. Atop the city wall, Ribera is deeply worried. Lancel gently pinches Ribera's cheek. She's immersed in self-blame over her powerlessness. Even though the truth was revealed, world, she still cannot solve the conspiracy behind it. Her father's question, "What can a noble lady do?" echoes in her ears. Lancel suddenly dismisses everyone around them, the air filled with heart-pounding silence. Then he begins loosening his tie. This action makes Ribera panic. He opens his chest and asks Ribera to reach out her hand. He takes her trembling hand and gently presses it on the glowing mark on his chest. This pattern that appeared after the previous emperor's death is his deepest secret. He has always refused to shed tears because he cannot see through the current emperor's intentions. Until this ordinary noble lady broke into his frozen world. Herman's advice suddenly echoes in her heart. Innocence can become strength. Lancel solemnly invites her to work together to investigate his parents' wrongful case and uncover the truth. Just as she hesitates, Apis' arrival interrupts this moment. Lancel manages to straighten his clothes in 1 second. Apis brings Ribera's lost necklace. The maids whisper among themselves, mistaking the necklace Tadeo gave as a love token. Lancel's expression instantly darkens, his gaze sharp as a blade. Ribera's heart sinks, not knowing how to explain this misunderstanding. Tadeo sits alone in the garden drinking tea, the surroundings uncomfortably quiet. He suddenly realizes he has grown accustomed to that noisy girl's presence. Just as longing surges, Ribera bursts into his view breathlessly. She frantically mentions the necklace, her voice trembling with anxiety. After seeing this necklace, Lancel immediately demanded to set a wedding date. Memories fled back like a tide. Lancel coldly questioned the necklace's origin. Ribera stammered evasively, claiming she couldn't remember the giver's appearance. Her heart is full of guilt, yet she must continue this well-intentioned lie. Lancel's gaze grows deeper, deciding to announce the engagement as soon as possible. This sudden decision catches Ribera off guard. She repeatedly confirms in disbelief, only receiving a firm response. Now facing Tadeo's inquiry, she denies her feelings with forced composure, yet her voice unconsciously drops, betraying her inner wavering. She admits she wants to find out why Lancel refuses to use the blessed tears. Besides gaining freedom, she also wants to know the reason Lancel won't cry. Tadeo keenly perceives the change in her feelings. He softly asks if he should discard this troublesome necklace. Meanwhile, Lancel reins in his horse before the Grand Duke's mansion. Workers move hurriedly, the air filled with unusual tension. Grand Duke Geralt nervously adjusts his clothing to receive this uninvited guest. Their outwardly respectful greetings cannot hide the sharpness in their words. Passing through the courtyard, Lancel casually mentions the construction workers. Geralt eagerly asks about his daughter's condition, trying to change the subject. Lancel suddenly stops and throws out that fatal question. Why would the Emperor's palace allow the Grand Duke's private soldiers free entry? He stares directly into Geralt's shocked eyes, demanding to know his agreement with the Emperor. Not long ago, the Emperor casually mentioned a waterway renovation plan. He deliberately mentioned the never-freezing river, observing Geralt's suddenly changing expression. This sacred river formed by the first Emperor's tears never freezes, symbolizing the spirit's blessing. The temple refused to grant Emperor Leiden jurisdiction over the river because he cannot shed tears. Now the Emperor is forcing Geralt to defy the temple's will and hand over control of the sacred river. Lancel sits in the reception room, questioning the Grand Duke's true motives for this action. Geralt excitedly states he only hopes his daughter can be safe. He plans to use his daughter becoming crown princess as an opportunity to send more guards into the palace. Lancel calmly asks whether this can truly guarantee Ribera's safety. These words completely enrage Geralt, his eyes reddening as he scolds the crown prince. If Lancel had used the blessed tears earlier, there would be no need for a bride selection ceremony. Even so, if he hadn't provoked Ribera, the Emperor wouldn't have taken advantage. Lancel suddenly realizes this Grand Duke known for ruthlessness has a weakness toward those he cherishes. Geralt can never be as ruthless as treating chess pieces. The Emperor is taking advantage of their visit to threaten the Grand Duke into surrendering control of the sacred river. Geralt suddenly demands why he chose Ribera alone among many noble ladies. Before Lancel's eyes appears the image of their first meeting, her panicked form on the bird's back. Those heterochromatic eyes intertwined with fear and stubbornness inexplicably caught his attention. He knew deeply that if he had let this woman go then, he would regret it for life. Memories surged like a tide, the clumsy invitation in the library, that warm embrace in the tree, the soft whispers in his ear at night. Each moment made his original plan deviate from its course. Finally, he looks up and gives a shocking answer. I like her foolishness. Under Geralt's astonished gaze, he lists Ribera's various flaws, kind to the point of ignoring benefits, impulsive without considering consequences. It's precisely this innocence that makes him feel unprecedented peace. Geralt painfully accuses him of not caring about Ribera's feelings at all. Lancel rises to leave but stops at the door. He asks Geralt whether he truly sees his daughter as a weakling who needs eternal protection. These words pierce like a blade through the Grand Duke's long-held belief. Meanwhile, Tadeo is toying with the necklace that caused such turmoil. Ribera anxiously states she must return it, yet cannot hide her guilt. She urgently wants to repay this kindness in other ways. Tadeo seizes the opportunity to request a private outing, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Ribera can only agree in confusion. The next day, Tadeo, dressed carefully, looks as dazzling as a spirit. Ribera is stunned speechless by his rare attire. The streets overflow with festive joy. People wear strange costumes celebrating the founding festival. Passers-by praise Ribera's heterochromatic eyes as special. She thanks them awkwardly, feeling tremendous pressure inside. Tadeo casually states no one will care about the second prince. He requests she call him by name. His eyes gleaming with expectation. Ribera finds it hard to refuse his deliberately deployed charm. The sight of couples dancing on the street awakens memories. She recalls her childhood and finally shows a smile. She proactively asks what festival gift Tadeo wants. He's deeply moved and invites her to dance. Ribera is initially shy but gradually gets into it. The two spin among the crowd, spending pleasant time together. At parting, a familiar melody makes her remember something. She hurriedly buys a music box as a return gift. Tadeo's expression suddenly turns serious as he receives the gift. He grips her hand tightly and begs her not to trust Lancel, warning her that continued trust will only bring harm. Ribera recalls this is similar to the words she heard while unconscious, but she's no longer the girl who blindly follows orders. Tadeo leaves alone with the music box. After returning home, he realizes with regret the plan has deviated. His expression is complex as his fingertips caress the music box. A woman descends the stairs with cold mockery, questioning whether he has developed feelings for his brother's fiancée. Tadeo coldly stares at Ovega, his eyes guarded. The priestess's joke touches the most sensitive part of his heart. She apologizes respectfully but points out he hasn't followed the plan. Building friendship with Ribera has exceeded the Emperor's orders. Tadeo chuckles lightly, saying this won't cause any scandal. Ovega warns that emotions might destroy their great cause. Memory returns to that bloody night. As a young boy, he witnessed Lancel covered in blood. Since then, a high wall was built between the brothers. He firmly believes Lancel's hands are stained with blood. Anyone who gets close to him will be harmed. This is the best reason to persuade Ribera. Suddenly, he realizes he shouldn't explain these things to the priestess. Ovega reminds him everything still requires her help. Tadeo mocks those believers in superstitious magic. He turns and leaves, his meaningful refusal lingering. Meanwhile, Ribera wakes up among piles of books. She discovers with frustration that records about the princes have been erased. API suggests searching for clues from different angles. She's shocked to discover someone once tried to poison the crown prince. Those traitors' records were completely destroyed. Apis reminds her the crown prince is waiting. Ribera hurriedly tidies the books that were scattered. Lancel leans against the wall, expressing dissatisfaction with her lateness. She frantically covers up her investigation activities. He keenly perceives her nervousness and concealment. Suddenly ignoring everyone's gaze, he hoists her onto his shoulder. Ribera is shocked speechless on his shoulder. He calmly says they need to talk in detail back in the room. Ribera struggles and protests indignantly on his shoulder, but he pays no attention to the shocked stares around them. Only upon entering the room does he gently put her down. Her cheeks are flushed, her eyes full of embarrassment and annoyance. But Lancel suddenly announces he wants to publicly display affection. This proposal makes her even more confused. He calmly explains the current grave situation. The Emperor is using the Grand Duke to steal the temple's power. This truth makes Ribera's whole body turn cold. Only now does she understand the Emperor's forgiveness was all an illusion. Her father was forced into the conspiracy to protect her. Guilt and self-blame instantly overwhelm her. Lancel watches the complex changes in her expression, not understanding why she always bears everything alone. He can't help reaching out to cover the back of her hand. This sudden contact makes both freeze. He quickly withdraws his hand, concealing his inner turmoil. Ribera presses him about the true purpose of publicly displaying affection. He explains they need to create public opinion to gain temple support. Claiming she was chosen by the spirits can protect the Grand Duke. Ribera smiles bitterly, saying no one will believe this lie. As they argue, an announcement comes from outside the door. A servant bursts in to relay the Emperor's summons for Ribera. Lancel is about to explode but is stopped by Ribera. She takes a deep breath, deciding to face this alone. For her father's sake, she must see the Emperor. Young Ribera softly asks her father why Mother never appeared in their lives. She always sees her father gazing into the distance alone with sorrow, afraid she's not good enough, making father always sad. Father gently describes that intelligent and strong woman. She had eyes that saw through the world and lofty ideals. Though he misses his wife, he's also content with the time he now has with his daughter. Ribera throws herself into father's arms, making an eternal promise. They will always accompany each other. The memory is abruptly interrupted by the servant's call. Apius is blocked outside the door by guards, unable to help. Ribera walks alone into the imposing palace hall. The Emperor looks down, examining this heterochromatic-eyed girl. He mockingly questions whether she has changed her original intention. Why abandon obtaining the tears to choose marriage with the crown prince? Ribera suppresses her fear, explaining this was a helpless choice. The Emperor presses, relentlessly questioning her dereliction in the maritime kingdom. She clearly had a chance to obtain the tears but chose to seek other methods. She gathers courage to ask the Emperor's true purpose for wanting the tears. If it's only for succession, why involve her father? The Emperor acts as if he heard the most ridiculous joke. His oppressive aura envelops the entire hall like something tangible. In her fear, Ribera recalls everyone's advice. Father told her to be compliant. Tadeo told her to be obedient. The heterochromatic woman told her to stay naive and not wake up. But father's lonely figure before the tombstone pierces her heart. She clenches her fists and declares she'd rather have regret than not pursue the truth. The Emperor tiredly summons the priestess, preparing to leave. Ovega's hand gently rests on Ribera's trembling shoulder. Those blood-red eyes look at her, remarking that Ribera's eyes are identical to her mother's. Ribera recalls Lancel's warning, her gaze locked on the priestess. Ovega, this mysterious woman who granted the Emperor his power? Years ago, she secured the throne for the previous Emperor's brother through through words alone. Now she mentions that almost forgotten mother. The Emperor impatiently interrupts this probing. He sets cruel terms, tears in exchange for freedom. Failure means death. Ribera finally understands the real reason Lancel hates the Emperor. This man will trample everything to achieve his goals. She angrily demands why he must harm innocent people. The Emperor says lightly that only she can collect the blessed tears. Ovega asserts these heterochromatic eyes have determined her fate. Ribera resists this absurd fatalism. She has no feelings for the mother she never met. The Emperor refuses to say more, setting the engagement ceremony as the final deadline. She has no choice but to accept this cruel deal. In the temple, people whisper about the Crown Prince's marriage. Some firmly believe there's a conspiracy behind this relationship. Lancel suddenly appears to stop these rumors. Ribera reluctantly cooperates with his performance. She deliberately puts on a cold expression, making him helpless. But the crowd sees this as proof of true love. Lancel keenly perceives her change after meeting the Emperor. That lively spirit has been replaced by heavy worries. He gently puts his arm around her shoulder, suggesting they rest for a while. He leads her away from the noise under everyone's gaze. The questioning man shows Karu a mocking smile. Apis silently notes this suspicious figure. The icy river water soaks through every inch of Ribera's skin. She surfaces, her eyes filled with despair and unwillingness. Her voice trembles as she wants to give up. She recalls Cain, that arrogant priest from 2 days ago. He proposed finding the purest stone in the never-freezing river. Only this way could she prove herself worthy of the sacred ceremony. But the murky river water obscures all hope. Every stone looks exactly the same. She cannot tell which one contains the purest spiritual energy. She is unwilling to continue this marriage imposed upon her. The cold stares from other priests sting her. She doesn't understand what her father did wrong to make her endure such humiliation and harassment. API suddenly remembers someone who might help, that attendant who always follows the Crown Prince. At this moment, Karu waits anxiously outside the temple. Lancel wears a white veil and prays devoutly. This is the first time he sees the Crown Prince so serious. Perhaps all of this is for that special young lady. When Karu turns to fetch water, he notices something unusual. Apis' sudden appearance catches him off guard. When he speeds up, Apis also starts running. Karu turns back to accuse her behavior, until Apis reveals his relationship with Cain, seeing that Cain is Karu's brother. Shocked, Karu instinctively wants to refuse the request, but under Apis' persuasion, he has no choice but to give in. Inside the temple, Lancel's prayer is interrupted by the commotion outside. He removes his veil, his heart filled with conflict and struggle. He doesn't know if he can trust that reckless girl. Walking on the road, he sees Ribera playing with the sacred bird. The moment their eyes meet, he hastily looks away. With a stumble, he falls into the water nearby. In the icy river water, Ribera struggles to drag Lancel to the shore. His soaked appearance shows rare embarrassment. Ribera expects to hear a word of thanks, but Lancel instantly switches to that cold Crown Prince. Questioning why she has to meddle, she slaps him in annoyance, her heart full of grievance. He asks about the reason for her presence here. She was just using the sacred bird Ruby to send messages, so she nervously uses searching for stones as an excuse. The guilt inside prevents her from looking into his eyes. A sudden sneeze breaks the tense atmosphere. Lancel notices her soaked clothes clinging to her skin. He quickly removes his outer garment and wraps her tightly. Lancel covers his face and shyly explains the reason. She belatedly blushes. He reaches out to gently touch her cold cheek. His tone carries genuine concern, urging her to quickly return to the warm indoors. But Ribera thinks this is another performance, until he admits there is no audience at this moment. This care comes purely from the heart. She falls silent, her heart filled with mixed emotions. His trust makes her feel tormented. The shadow of betrayal follows her like a ghost. The next morning, cold symptoms arrive as expected. Karu comes to visit with important information. He explains in detail the characteristics of the stones. Spiritual energy responds to strong wishes. The more sincere the wish, the more obvious the stone's reaction. He softly asks Ribera about her true inner desire. This question makes her fall into deep thought. Lancel walks briskly through the corridor, his mind heavy with thoughts. Karu rushes over to report Ribera's decision. She will participate in the sacred ceremony with her own gemstone. All the priests have gathered at the ceremony site. Ribera walks slowly forward, holding a shining gemstone. In her illness, her cheeks show an unnatural flush. Lancel immediately steps forward to inquire about her condition. She stubbornly insists on completing this ceremony. The priest's whispers echo in the hall. Cain listens to the discussions, his face growing darker. He looks at the gemstone in his hand, determined to win. The ceremony begins. Cain places his gemstone first. Brilliant light ripples layer by layer in the water. Everyone marvels at this unprecedented strong reaction. Cain responds with a smug smile. Ribera feels immense pressure. She anxiously confirms the backup plan with Lancel. He softly reassures her and encourages her to continue. She drops the gemstone into the water, but only a light sound comes. Disappointed sighs spread through the hall. Just when everyone thinks the outcome is decided, strange gurgling sounds suddenly come from the water. The entire cave begins to shake violently. The priests panic and try to flee. Water and light wrap around Ribera layer by by layer. A massive water column shoots up into the sky. She slowly collapses in the light. Ribera once again arrives at that mysterious space. The woman with heterochromatic eyes sternly questions her wish. Lancel holds her body and calls out urgently. Golden light slowly blooms around them. Dazzling golden light blooms in the hall. Countless bird-shaped points of light gather and circle in the air. The woman in the alternate space asks about her wish. Ribera softly asks what wishes ordinary people would make. She lists honor, praise, and the desire to make up for the past. She quietly gazes at this mysterious woman, beginning to doubt the other's true identity. She admits initially she only wanted to return to when her father was alive, but the more she clung to the past, the more lost she felt. Does it mean she can never find happiness in the present? Lancel's figure emerges in her memory. His gentle words beneath the cold exterior echo in her ears. Those seemingly casual encouragements and trust taught her to cherish everything she has in the present. In the end, she makes a wish to bear hardships alone, only wishing to walk forward with her own feet toward a future where everyone smiles. Golden light birds merge into her body like raindrops. The water surface beneath her feet ripples with strange patterns. The woman announces the spirits have chosen her as the savior. She prophesies the world will soon fall into chaos and greed. Only a pure heart can calm this catastrophe. She accepts this great responsibility without hesitation, even though she may forever lose a peaceful life. The woman's relieved smile fades in the light. Ribera doesn't have time to ask her one suspicion. She slowly awakens to the calling voices. APIs urgently describes the miracle that occurred. She stares at her own hands in disbelief, trying to sense that strange and powerful force. Meanwhile, Lancel is arguing intensely with the priests. The high priest fanatically proclaims the return of the Age of Spirits, insisting on keeping Ribera in the temple to cultivate her power. The priests gather fanatically downstairs, shouting. Ribera is shocked by this sudden worship. Lancel despises their opportunism. Those who once rejected her now compete to flatter her. She naively thinks this isn't so bad. Lancel secretly decides to prevent any possibility of her becoming a priest. Ribera is grateful for his help, but worried about insufficient power. He gently holds her hand and says he will teach her to sense spiritual energy. He patiently explains the principles of energy flow. She tries hard but still cannot grasp the key. Lancel suddenly presses his forehead against hers. The warm touch makes her heart race. Golden light instantly blooms in the room. Bird-shaped spiritual energy circles and dances joyfully. Her face turns completely red, thinking he was about to kiss her. But Lancel calmly says she has already grasped the key. At this moment, Grand Duke Geralt arrives furiously, engaging in fierce verbal confrontation with the High Priest, learning about the changes that occurred in his daughter. He urgently bursts into the room. Seeing Ribera playing with the bird-shaped spiritual energy, she proudly displays her newly acquired power, claiming she can do well even without her father. These words pierce the old wounds in Geralt's heart. He angrily questions why she rejects his protection, why she never treats herself as a noble lady. Ribera softly speaks the cruel truth. She can never replace his lost biological daughter. These words make Geralt completely lose control. A slap sounds especially loud in the silence. In the memory, Lucia happily turns around in the garden. She excitedly shows her father the flowers in her hand. Geralt gently holds his daughter in his arms. This is the most precious gift his late wife left him. By the window on a rainy night, father and daughter both miss their lost loved one. Lucia longs to pick flowers by the riverbank for her mother. Geralt worries about the danger and gently dissuades this idea. He sincerely praises that the flowers his daughter planted are more special. Lifting his daughter up, he makes a promise full of expectations, believing she will be able to accomplish anything she wants in the future. These words are deeply engraved in Lucia's heart. The next day, she went alone to the dangerous riverbank. When Geralt arrived, only the merciless river water remained. Even the final goodbye became an eternal regret, until he met that familiar figure at the street corner. The face so similar to his beloved daughter makes him dazed. Only the different colored eyes remind him this is not Lucia. He insists on bringing Ribera home to care for her. At this moment, Ribera lowers her head to hide her hurt expression. She expresses thanks and apology in a distant tone. Geralt excitedly interrupts her words, insisting she acknowledge the father-daughter relationship. He finally expresses disappointment and says he will no longer interfere with her choices. APIs deeply blames herself for the earlier oversight. Ribera softly comforts her, saying she is already used to this. She has long understood she is always a substitute. Late at night, she lies alone in the temple guest room, contemplating, thinking about how to deal with the predicament before her. A knock on the window suddenly breaks the silence of the night. Tadeo appears with a gentle smile, caringly asking about her life in the temple. Tadeo shows a mysterious smile at the window. He extends his hand, inviting Ribera to join him for a night outing. Ribera hesitates, worried about causing more trouble, but he gently takes her hand, promising they won't be discovered. The next second, he wraps his arm around her waist and takes her into the air. The night wind howls past. She nervously holds her breath, finally landing on a rooftop overlooking the entire temple. The magnificent view glimmers under the moonlight. Tadeo thoughtfully drapes a coat over her to keep warm, seemingly casually asking about the progress of the blessed tears. Ribera immediately becomes alert to the real purpose of his visit. He denies any intention to spy, and instead asks about the marriage. She admits her wish to stay by Lancel's side, recalling every moment spent with him, feeling for the first time the warmth of being needed and cherished. But Tadeo reminds her that all of this is an illusion, advising her to see clearly the price she will pay. She insists the notices her willing choice. He says dejectedly the truth that the Emperor only allows her to stay. If she loses her usefulness, everything will change. Then he takes out a lipstick and places it in her palm, softly explaining this is the last chance. The lipstick contains trace amounts of poison. Kissing the eyes during the ceremony can obtain the blessed tears. Ribera is shocked by his unscrupulous methods. He argues this is all to protect her safety. He leans close to her ear and whispers, asking if she is willing to leave with him. Meanwhile, Cain paces restlessly in his room. Thinking about his status being threatened, he burns with anger. A mysterious priestess suddenly appears, holding red paper marked with spell symbols. Her blood-red eyes flash with an ominous light, claiming to tell him an astonishing secret. Ribera stares at the lipstick on the vanity, her heart torn. The attendant's reminder awakens her from chaotic thoughts. Karu is excited about the upcoming ceremony, but Apis worries about not being able to carry weapons. Karu patiently explains the significance of the ceremony displaying the Empire's power. The commotion in the distance announces the Emperor's arrival. The Emperor whispers with the priestess, confirming the plan's progress. The High Priest reassures Ribera not to be nervous, but in her heart she only thinks about the mission of the Blessed Tears, imagining the impact if the Crown Prince cries in public. Earth-shaking cannon fire announces the official start of the ceremony. The priests enter in formation, the scene solemn and dignified. Lancel wears a white veil and walks slowly toward the altar. Tadeo watches all this coldly from the corner. Lancel kneels and recites ancient incantations. The staff bursts with dazzling light. Ribera gently lifts his veil. The moment their eyes meet, time seems to stand still. Lancel takes her hand and solemnly announces their engagement, making eternal vows witnessed by everyone. He gently kisses her eyelids, completing the traditional ceremony. When it's Ribera's turn, she falls into deep hesitation, knowing that obtaining the tears now would bring her freedom, but she cannot ignore his true feelings. Under everyone's surprised gaze, she makes an unexpected decision, gently kissing his lips instead of his eyelids. This action shocks the entire venue. Lancel senses an unusual sensation in his shock. He abruptly pushes Ribera away from his embrace. She urgently wants to explain the meaning of this kiss, but blood suddenly pours continuously from the corner of his mouth. She discovers in horror that the situation is completely out of control. That lipstick contains deadly poison she didn't know about. At this moment, red-robed invaders pour in like a tide. The sacred hall instantly descends into chaos and panic. Cain seizes the opportunity to loudly accuse her of crimes, blaming all the disasters on her. Karu guides the crowd to evacuate in the chaos. APS rescues a trapped little girl in time, but cannot break through the encirclement to reach her master. Ribera looks at Lancel's pale face. The bright red blood stings her eyes. All of this has far exceeded her expectations. She tries to approach to explain, but is roughly blocked. Cain harshly pushes her to the ground. The guards immediately surround her. She still shouts the truth in vain. Lancel's eyes are filled with disappointment and pain. Tadeo quietly appears behind her, quietly questioning her betrayal and broken promise, admitting the terrible origin of this poison. It is the very forbidden poison that killed the previous emperor. Ribera desperately realizes she has been deceived. Lancel uses his last strength to question. Those words, "Why did you betray me?" shatter her heart. Lancel watches Ribera's desperate expression as memories flood back like a tide. That night, his mother's face, as she gazed at his dying father, resurfaces. The same desperate expression, the same helpless eyes. He has always wondered what goes through the mind of someone showing such an expression. Cain cannot understand why the crown prince hesitates to make a decision. Jealousy gnaws at his heart like a venomous snake. He raises the sacred staff again to attack Ribera. Tadeo coldly blocks this strike, declaring he is unworthy to lay a hand on her. Cain completely breaks down in anger, screaming about injustice. Ribera trembles as she admits everything is her fault. She chokes out her wish to just stay by his side. Lancel watches her hypocrisy with the coldest gaze. A childhood phantom appears behind her, softly scolding, accusing her that all her decisions were for self-gratification, that the so-called helping others is just a selfish excuse. Ribera finally realizes her arrogance and ignorance. Tears silently fall as she admits her unworthiness. Red feathers fall from the sky like snowflakes. Ruby carries the two attendants and breaks through the chaos to descend. Apis lands precisely by stepping on Cain's face. She launches an attack on Tadeo without hesitation. Tadeo quickly dodges. Apis turns to express her unwavering loyalty to Ribera. Karu panics on the bird's back as he discovers the crown prince's injuries. Lancel still stubbornly waits for an explanation. Ribera doesn't know what choice to make in her confusion. Ruby suddenly transforms into human form and gently embraces her from behind, gently awakening her forgotten courage and original intention. Countless bird-shaped spiritual energies dance gracefully around. They promise together to accompany her through everything. Cain cannot believe the miracle before his eyes, that legendary spirits would return for one person. Ruby softly asks Ribera about her true inner wish. She once longed to return to the good times when her father was still alive. She also wished she could erase every moment of hurting Lancel, but at this moment, she finally understands these are not the real answers. After wiping away tears, a determined light reignites in her eyes. Her only wish is for everyone around her to find happiness. With a wave of her hand, golden bird flocks surge toward the invaders like a tide. In the panicked crowd, a father anxiously searches for his daughter. As the red-robed person's blade is about to fall, golden light flashes. The little girl safely returns to her father's arms, and they embrace and cry. The golden bird flock, completely eliminates the evil forces. People cheer and celebrate the miracle of the spirit's return. Ruby picks up the spirit stone from the staff and sternly questions, why use pure objects to commit such filthy deeds? The golden bird flock immediately launches a fierce attack on Kane. He furiously orders the guards to seize Ribera. Apius resolutely stands in front to protect her safety. Ribera slowly walks toward the weakened Lancel. Kneeling before him, she speaks of her inner regret, admitting that her initial approach was indeed only for the blessed tears, but in spending time together she was gradually consumed by guilt, longing to be able to openly stay by his side. Too caught up in how to confess these feelings, she actually forgot to wipe off the deadly poison on her lips. Lancel gently cups her tear-streaked face, asking her to look directly at the pain in his eyes. Lancel's heart is torn by pain and betrayal. The feeling of stomach cramps and racing heartbeat almost devours him. He hates that all her kindness was an elaborately disguised lie, but he wavers upon hearing her sincere confession. The moment he sees her tears, all anger begins to crumble. He gently touches her face and softly speaks of his hatred, but his arms involuntarily pull her into his embrace. This contradictory emotion is unbearable for him. Ribera is too shocked to speak in his embrace. He admits he already noticed her deal with the Emperor, but arrogantly thought he could control everything. What pains him most is not the fact of being deceived, but discovering he actually feels joy at her confession. He demands she make a vow to never betray him. As she solemnly swears, he recalls conversations with his mother, still uncertain whether she is worth his tears, but he is certain he has been completely conquered by her. He gently kisses her lips, declaring his surrender. All the pain seems to dissipate at this moment, until Ribera frantically pushes him away. Ruby suddenly warns about Kane's abnormal state. Red light wraps around Kane like ribbons. He speaks heretical statements that violate doctrine. In an instant, he regains consciousness, confused and at a loss. The high priest orders him to be taken away from the scene. Lancel realizes this is a controlled replica. The Emperor is greatly dissatisfied with the chaotic outcome, but the priestess confirms with satisfaction that the plan succeeded, certain that the Crown Prince will ultimately shed tears for this girl.